Hi, all. Welcome back. This is going to be the final lecture in Unit 2 for Jean-Jacques Rousseau. We're just going to cover the final chapter, Civil Religion. It's his sort of huge manifesto against religion and how religion and the state cannot coexist. So let's get into it. Really interesting chapter. So he says that religion is the entire reason that humanity has been split, and religion has given rise to intolerance among humans. Excuse me. Quote. Oh, geez, excuse me. National divisions thus led to polytheism, and this in turn gave rise to theological and civil intolerance, which, as we shall see hereafter, are by nature the same. So he's saying as religions split, they became nations, and those nations used those gods to prop up their state, right? He says, however, as there have always been a prince and civil laws, this double power and conflict of jurisdiction have made all good polity impossible in Christian states, and men have never succeeded in finding out whether they were bound to obey the master or the priest. So he's saying there's a severe contradiction in Christian societies, in particular, with the idea that they are told by their priests and by their religion to follow Christ over the state, right? And so Rousseau is saying there will always be this contradiction within Christian states where the sovereign is being challenged at all times by Christian nationalism. He says, wherever the clergy is a corporate body, it is master and legislator in its own country. There are thus two powers, two sovereigns, in England and in Russia as well as elsewhere. The masterful spirit of Christianity is incompatible with his system, and that the priestly interest would always be stronger than that of the state. So my question to you, and this is one of the main questions in this unit, is this true? Can America be a democracy with a giant, quote-unquote, corporate religion like Christianity in its midst? He says, we should demonstrate to the former that no state has ever been founded without a religious basis. So he's saying religion is vital in the founding of a nation. Excuse me. It's so sweaty out here. I'm always got a runny nose. And to the latter, that the law of Christianity at bottom does more harm by weakening than good by strengthening the constitution of the state. He says there is a third sort of religion of a more singular kind, which gives men two codes of legislation, two rulers, two countries, renders them subject to contradictory duties, and makes it impossible for them to be faithful both to religion and to citizenship. Such are the religions of the Lamas and the Japanese, and such is Roman Christianity, which may be called the religion of the priest. It leads to a sort of mixed and antisocial code which has no name. So he's given just a scathing interpretation of religion and its role in the state. He says a society of true Christians would not be a society of men. It's not the same as making a social compact with the state. And then he goes on and says, Christian charity does not readily allow a man to think hardly of his neighbors. As soon as, by some trick, he has discovered the art of imposing on them and getting hold of a share in the public authority, you have a man established in dignity. It is the will of God that he be respected. Very soon you have a power. It is God's will that he be obeyed. And if the power is abused by him who wields it, it is the scourge wherewith God punishes his children. There would be scruples about driving up the usurper. Public tranquility would have to be disturbed. Violence would have to be employed, and blood spilled. All this accords ill with Christian meekness. After all, in this vale of sorrow, what does it matter whether we are free men or serfs? The essential thing is to get to heaven, and resignation is only an additional means of doing so. So he's saying here that, like, because we have the Christian promise of heaven, and that this world is sort of broken and cursed, um, Christians don't see trying to improve the physical world that we live in as useful or dignified, because all they care about is going to heaven. And so he's saying that's sort of a detractor to Christian believers, at least when it comes to being good citizens. And then he says, quote, "But I am mistaken in speaking of a Christian republic. The terms are mutually exclusive. Christianity preaches only servitude and dependence. Its spirit is favorable to tyranny, that it would always profit by such a regime. True Christians are made to be slaves, and they know it and do not much mind. This short life counts for too little in their eyes." So he says, I mean, he's basically saying that, like, the church and the Bible and your pastor or priest set you up from the day you're born to be a slave to Christianity and to the Bible rather than to the state, right? And to learn submission and servitude. Yeah, man. The final quote I have here is, "Those who distinguish civil from theological intolerance are, to my mind, mistaken. The two forms are inseparable. It is impossible to live at peace with those we regard as damned. To love them would be to hate God who punishes them. We positively must either reclaim or torment them. Wherever theological intolerance is admitted, it must inevitably have some civil effect. And as soon as it has such an effect, the sovereign is no longer sovereign even in the temporal sphere. Thenceforth, priests are the real masters, and kings only their ministers." So, like I said, just a scathing closing argument from Rousseau, arguing that Christianity is inherently incompatible with the social contract. And so that's one of the unit's questions. And I try to always give you guys two, like one deeply philosophical and one sort of real world applicable. So you get to sort of take your own path in what you want to research. Anyway, okay, that's the end of Unit 2. I know it was a lot. It's one of the most famous philosophical political treatises of all time. It's one of the very well quoted by the American founders and other European constitutionalists. So I'm glad we read the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you for the next section, which is Unit 3, which will be sort of a collection of critiques. So the Marxist critique of capitalism, right, and industrialization and urbanization, and then three American civil rights advocates: Frederick Douglass from the pre-Civil War era, and then Malcolm X and Martin Luther King from the civil rights era in the 1960s. So I'll see you then. Have a wonderful summer, and keep working hard. Thanks so much.